Ladies and gentlemen,
everybody wants the prize, but nobody wants to pay the price.
Can they be pushed? Do they have a sense of urgency? Do they want to be great?
And then, of course, you look at them and be like, yeah, right.
Everybody wants to be on your team when you're on top.
I saw the angel and the marble, and I carved until I set him free.
Go be somebody, bro.
But the most important part of the Be Somebody journey is the resilience.
Welcome to the Be Somebody Podcast, your real and raw destination for all things entrepreneurship, leadership, and culture. One of the top-rated business podcasts in the world. Now give it up for your host, Be Somebody Inc. and BSB Group International founder and CEO, Kash Shaikh.
Welcome to the Be Somebody Podcast. I am back here with my partner in crime, Herbie Pilata.
What's up, Kash?
How's it going, Herbie?
Man, I'm doing great. How are you?
We are on a roll. We got season 2 off to a great start.
It's been awesome.
Yes, thank you everyone for listening, for subscribing, for following us on our social media at Be Somebody Blog on Twitter and Instagram. Man, we appreciate the love. But Herbie, man, it's crazy because now we're getting into summer, and I'm so used to coming here in like the coat or my little hoodies. And today it was like 95 degrees even here in Cincinnati, Ohio. Yeah. So that transition feels like it just came so abruptly because we were staying at home indoors in our air conditioning for so long, and now all of a sudden it's freaking summer.
Yeah, and it's so great to be in the t-shirt in here. Not
you
have to
rocking
be in
your summer wear. You got your flip flops on as well.
It's below the table, so you can't see that right now, but maybe
Speedo and sandals,
yeah, absolutely.
below the table.
It's a party down there, right?
But man, the other thing, speaking of the summer, this is typically the time that families are taking their summer vacations.
Yeah.
For months and months, they've been planning, they've been anticipating, they've been waiting to go on that family trip. If it's like my parents, the kids were excited, mom was excited, my dad was like, God, do we have to do this? Like he was thinking of how torturous it would be to spend, a week with me and my brothers and my mom. But families are planning that, but that whole cycle has been fully thrown off this year.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to think about now. Before you used to just be able to hop in the car, hop on a plane, and go kind of wherever you want. But now there's so much more to it.
Well, when you think about, Herbie, all the kind of big customary summer vacation spots like the beach, or I know a lot of people, my family went to the Grand Canyon, some of those outdoor places, while there's restrictions, in a lot of ways, it's easier for the social distancing. It's easier to space out. It's easier to kind of make sure you have your safety in order and your sanitary guidelines in order. But the other big places are theme parks, amusement parks, water world, sea worlds, places like that. And those types of establishments have some of the biggest challenges when you think about thousands of people all coming into the park from all over the country and sometimes all over the world.
Yeah, and even touching the same things, right? Getting on a roller coaster and you're touching the safety bars of everybody. Right. You don't know where anybody's been.
Right. So that has been one of the most fascinating things to watch as you've seen businesses slowly open up across the country, and we've gone down the checklist from the essential businesses to the more kind of, call it mid-level businesses, and now the entertainment type places. Like we just have a casino here in Cincinnati that's opened up very shortly. So there's a lot of these bigger entertainment places now opening up. And it's going to be really interesting to see how that goes, which is why I'm really excited about who we have on the show today, because Rex Jackson, the general manager of Legoland, just opened up their resort.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. It's really going to be great to talk to him.
When you look at the numbers, right, and you look at the financial impact, and we've talked a lot on the show about all the industries that have been impacted by coronavirus, by the shutdowns across the board, from some that are doing well, like grocery and health and wellness, and some that have been decimated, like hospitality, travel, and tourism. And this type of entertainment of theme parks has been one of those, because all these big parks have been shut down. When you think about the size of the tourism industry in general, Herbie, in 2019, direct spending by travelers in the U.S. totaled $1.1 trillion, which contributed to $2.6 trillion to the economy. That's $280 billion on food services, $240 billion on lodging, $117 billion on recreation and amusement, $210 billion on public transportation. I mean, these are massive, massive numbers. During the height of the pandemic, man, all these theme parks were shut down. Disney World usually gets 60 million people a year. You know, Legoland gets 16 million people a year. These businesses lost basically a few months of their pre-peak period. Disney's theme park division lost $1 billion in operating income in the second quarter of 2020 due to coronavirus. SeaWorld furloughed 95% of their workforce across all its parks in the United States. Six Flags revenue was down 20% in the first 3 months of 2020 compared to the last year. And when you look at what some of the key analysts on Wall Street have been saying and what they were predicting, some of them said zero park attendance for the latter half of fiscal year 2020. Now, most of those people are wrong now because these parks are starting to open up. So the doomsday scenario isn't in place, but that was the prediction. That was the prognostication. But they also said only 50% capacity in 2021, meaning they really believe that the impacts are going to be felt for a long time, because when these parks open up, and we'll talk to Rex about this, they have a lot of restrictions obviously in place. They have limits in place in terms of how many people can be in the park at the same time. They have certain concessions and certain elements of the park that are no longer functioning. So there's just so much, and we think about the operation and the detail and the management that's necessary to open up something like that with safety top of mind, and also still providing that experience and that getaway that a lot of people are looking for right now. I mean, it's massive, man. So I'm pumped to talk to Rex. I have to admit, he's also part of the Tide detergent, Tide laundry lineage. I keep bringing. I mean, I'm going to bring every person I ever work with on the Tide brand, Herbie. Some person
we're going to find is going to have a story to share with us about you. We're just waiting for the right one.
Oh man, we got stories, but I text them ahead of time. I'm like, yo, don't share that one, you know. But Rex is awesome. We actually worked together on Tide to Go, and Rex was really one of the early pioneers of the Tide to Go stick. And we did everything, and we worked on Super Bowl campaigns on Tide with Tide to Go, and he was just an awesome partner. And what I really love about how our relationship evolved is when I left P&G and went to GoPro and then went to Besomebody, he was one of those people who was always supportive and kind of cheering me on and our team on. And I was doing the same for him, because he made some big moves in his life and his career, moving from Cincinnati to Orlando. And we're going to go through all of his background and everything. But he's just an amazing person, someone that I really appreciate. And I can't wait to get him on the phone.
Can we do the podcast from there?
Exactly. Live from Legoland.
Hey, let's go.
Is the funnel cake still going to be there, man? Because if the funnel cake's there,
go.
Then it's good. Then we're good.
Awesome, Kash. Well, I'm super excited. Let's bring him on the show. Let's welcome to the show a leader who graduated with a bachelor's degree from Drury University. He then went on to get his MBA from the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. A 15-year veteran of the CPG, food service, and theme park industries, he began his career as a brand manager with Procter and Gamble before spending several years as brand manager and marketing director of the Olive Garden and Longhorn Steakhouse brands. Today, he's the general manager of Legoland Florida Resort. From Orlando, Florida, please welcome Rex Jackson!
Hello.
Josh, we got him on the line.
That is an opening that will be tough to beat. I'm going to have to hire you to come introduce me to my team every day.
Hey, that's what we need. Put him at the theme park.
You need PA announcements. I'm your guy.
I know
funnel cake is available.
Definitely hook you up.
I will work for funnel cake too, and corn dogs.
Rex, how are you, man? Great to have you on the show.
Yeah, doing well. It's a pleasure to be here, and great to speak with you again, Kash.
I was just telling Herbie, Rex, that I always remember our early days on Tide to Go. A lot of people didn't know yet the beautiful mastery of that pen, the magic that was in that Tide to Go stick. But you were one of the early pioneers who created that, man. And those were some of the most fun days of my career, man.
Well, I think what I loved about it as well is because it was a smaller brand, as you know, Cash, we were able to push the boundaries on a lot of what we were able to do in the marketing front there. So some of my best marketing memories go back to that very first brand and some of the programs that you and I worked together on, with Kelly Ripa, Jim Baree, the Super Bowl campaign. So there were some great memories from those days.
Think about that. Like our first campaign, we got Kelly Ripa and the Super Bowl, man. You can't really top that.
Not at all. Not at all.
Herbie, just so you know, though, I feel extra special, and so should you, because I just saw Rex Jackson a couple weeks ago on the Today Show. I can't imagine a bigger platform. And then Rex takes a step up to come to the Be Somebody podcast.
I feel honored just to be here.
Rex, man, who would have thought in a month's time you go Today Show and the Be Somebody podcast, man? Life goals right here.
Hey, I'm definitely pleased to be here today, though, Cash. No place I'd rather be than talking with you about Be Somebody and being able to share our story about Legoland Florida Resort and the path that we've been on the past few months.
Well, awesome, man. And you did so great on the Today Show. And I'm so excited to really listen and learn from you. And I know all of our listeners are, because you have such a monumental task ahead of you. I know you guys opened up on June 1st, I believe. But before we get into everything that you've been doing over the last couple months and the weeks and months ahead, I'd love for you, Rex, to share a little bit more about your background, your personal journey to get you to where you are today.
Yeah, I think my personal story, I think, is going to be something that resonates, with you and any of your subscribers who know your story of resilience that you preach about, and is so much ingrained within the Be Somebody movement as well. Because that was really my early story does go to one of resilience, because I didn't follow the traditional path that many think of when they hear of somebody that was in brand management at Procter and Gamble. Somebody that went to school for 4 years in college, graduated, went out and worked for a few years, then went to MBA school, and then landed at P&G. That was the traditional path that certainly a lot of my peers throughout my career followed, but mine was a little bit more of a winding road, you might say, where my college days found myself looking for what that path was going to be. So I didn't follow that traditional 4-year path. I ended up starting college and then taking a few years off. And, I worked in general management, and I'm going to date myself here, at Blockbuster Video.
Oh, man.
That goes back a little ways, pre-Netflix.
Was it back in the Be Kind Rewind days, or was it post that?
Oh, of course. I was right there. I was right there at the cusp of the transition from VHS to DVD. So, but no, I still reflect back on that as part of a career journey that, oftentimes you don't think about the time frame before you graduate college. But that probably planted the seed for me in terms of my business interest. And there were still a lot of leadership lessons that I use today that I actually learned back in one of my very first leadership jobs as a store manager for a Blockbuster video chain. But from there, I kind of, that kind of reignited that bug to go back to school, finish my degree. And then from there, I kind of, played what I felt like was catch up to make up for those 2 or 3 years where, many of my friends and counterparts had already gone off to grad school and on into their careers. I was playing catch up. So that's kind of been the driving force behind my career. As I look back at it, is that sense of being a challenger, of trying to rise to the occasion. And certainly after finishing my MBA program, I was fortunate to be able to go to Procter and Gamble. But many people don't know I didn't start off in brand management. I took a gamble. I actually started off in their sales side. Called
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And that's a team full of brilliant, impassioned salespeople. Probably one of the best sales forces in all of in all of CPG. But it was a gamble that I took. You go back to resilience and taking a chance on what your passion is. I wanted to be in brand management when I went back for my MBA program, and I had an offer from Walgreens in Chicago, in traditional marketing, brand management type role. And I had an offer from P&G. And the only offer I had, though, was for sales in CBD. And I took a risk because P&G was, for me, the pinnacle. I probably bleed orange, from my Tide days still. But that was the risk that I took, was to go ahead and lean in, take the risk to get into the company that I wanted to be at, maybe not the function, and see if I could earn my way into the brand management track. And a year and a half later, after joining, I was able to make that transition. I had the support of a fantastic leader in my sales team, and he helped me make that transition because he knew that's what my passion was. And, from there, the rest of my career kind of followed with some, logical steps. But the starting point of it really wasn't what you might think when you talk to somebody that's sitting as a general manager of a theme park today.
That's amazing, man. And I love the reflections and the tie back to resilience and passion. And now I'm reminded how you and I have connected on that over the years and your support and your messages. And whenever we talk, we're always on the same vibe and the same wavelength when it came to pushing through, persevering, the passion to keep going, man. So, I mean, it makes a lot of sense that somebody could do, to logically go from a Tide to Go stick to pasta at Olive Garden to running Legoland. I mean, it makes perfect sense, Rex.
I told my kids, I've gone from selling detergent to selling restaurants to selling theme parks. I don't know where I go from here. Possibly sports. I know you have a strong passion for sports. So
right.
Maybe someday I could be lucky enough to own or work in a sports franchise. But I've been blessed in my career.
Sports and upholstery, I think. I think upholstery is the next thing. Carpet cleaners. So then you ended up coming to P&G, obviously making that shift from sales into the brand management organization. You were leading some really high profile work. Yeah,
I think my time at P&G, again, I don't think I could have had 3 different assignments that would have better positioned me for the future opportunities I was going to have in my career as well. They were all on Tide. Like I mentioned before, if you cut me, I'll probably bleed orange still because you work 5 years on that brand and it becomes a part of you. But 3 very different assignments. I went from Tide to Go, which you mentioned, was my first assignment, and then I stepped into leading the marketing efforts for our 2X compaction. Moving to ultra concentrated, which was the highest priority project.
Project Cooper was the code name.
That's right. That's right. And then from there, I moved into our entry back into the stain removal category with Tide Stain Release. Competing against the likes of OxyClean and Spray and Wash, which was a category that P&G had struggled to enter in the past. And so leading that project as we attempted to launch into a brand new category for us, but compete against some very entrenched competitors. So you move from market leader positions like Tide detergent to a challenger brand, like a stain release, to a new product category, which is instant stain removal. So 3 very different experiences all on the same brand. And then that's just an opportunity that I think that a company like P&G was able to give me. And I definitely took advantage of that. And, one of the things I always, whenever I have mentorship opportunities, sometimes I'll get the question of, should you take the easy assignment so you can really, knock it out of the water and, knock it over the wall, I should say, and, deliver it? Or should you take the challenging assignments or, they're maybe more challenging, but, they're higher risk. And my career, I've benefited from those higher risk, but high profile projects.
I'm the same way. I love that. I always at P&G, I was always wanting to go work on the brands that were struggling a bit, or the ones that had been counted out, or the ones that were not growing, because I wanted to be the guy or part of the team to help them turn around and help them rebound. Because there's always those ones where you were kind of flatlining, or you had small incremental growth, but I love the challenges of new categories, new products, new innovations. And when people said, "Hey, this is going to be really tough," I'm like, "Yo, sign me up."
Yeah, that's it. And then that speaks again to that word, resilience. Really taking on the challenge and being passionate about something.
Yep. So then, Rex. So what happened to make you go down to Florida?
Florida was, to be honest, it was always a dream destination for me in terms of lifestyle and a place that I wanted to live. When I was in business school, I looked at opportunities in Florida, and there are actually more Fortune 500 companies in the city of Cincinnati than there are in the entire state of Florida.
Really?
And so the opportunities when I graduated, from my MBA program, there just weren't really a lot of opportunities in Florida. But it was a headhunter call that came in with an opportunity to go work for Darden Restaurants, which is the leading casual dining restaurant chain in the country. It's interesting because I was at Darden during a fairly tumultuous time period. Olive Garden, when I first joined it, they were in the midst of what ended up being, don't quote me if I'm wrong, it's either 52 or 53 consecutive quarters, not months, but quarters of same restaurant sales growth, which in the restaurant industry is almost unheard of. Just that long run of success. And it was based off of the marketing campaign that most people are still familiar with today. When you're here, your family.
Right.
But what I saw there was, it's almost the kind of the visual metaphor that I use is the ostrich that puts its head in the sand and doesn't realize the danger that's circulating around it, and it just tries to ignore it. And so what I found during my time there is that it was a company and a brand that had become more focused on not breaking the string of consecutive same restaurant sales growth, instead of looking at those threats that were out there, which in my time was the fast casual business, the Paneras, the Chipotles, this new category that was having explosive growth. But the casual dining industry, and not just Darden, but Bloomin' Brands and Applebee's and Chili's, all those brands that were so successful in the 90s, were still successful from a total business standpoint, but their growth had started to be eaten away by this new player in the fast casual. And so what I took away from that was just the need to always keep your pulse on the consumer, and on the changing dynamics within that consumer, in that industry, consumer taste and consumer profiles, and just the broader industry, and what are those macro changes that are happening that can influence your brand? Maybe not immediately, maybe not today, but certainly, piece by piece over time, that can ultimately then lead to a situation where you're no longer, delivering those results you had delivered for 53 quarters. All of a sudden now you're struggling for growth.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a great point and such a powerful insight when, because as business leaders, oftentimes we get those blinders on those one or two metrics, whether it's market share or, household penetration or stock price or whatever it is that we use as the barometer for success. And in your case, it sounds like what people were so focused on that they didn't see or weren't thinking enough about the emerging trends and threats around them.
Yeah, very much. My time on Longhorn was very different because where Olive Garden was the clear category leader within Italian, Longhorn was that quintessential challenger brand. With Outback Steakhouse as our number one competitor, it was double the size of Longhorn at the time. So my time on Longhorn was a very different experience because now we were the challenger. We weren't the leader. We didn't have the resources that the Olive Garden team had, but yet we were still growing, and that was a unique and fun culture. Still within the Darden portfolio, but each of the individual brands definitely took on their own culture, and I'd say the Longhorn culture was one that was a lot of fun to be a part of at the time. And again, just a tremendous group of senior leaders on that business at the time and still today that have really shaped that brand. It was very different experiences, in my time there between the Olive Garden brand and the Longhorn brand, and you take away a lot of lessons from both of those experiences.
Well, I'm glad you got to, because at P&G, obviously P&G has a massive portfolio of brands. Even in the fabric care division, we had Tide, we had Gain, we had Cheer, we had one person on Era. Running Era. I think we had one person like in a cellar running the Era detergent brand. But you were always on Tide, and then at Darden, you got to actually experience your professional career on a couple different brands. Which I'm sure taught you a lot as you went from the leader in the market to a challenger brand.
Yeah, again, two different cultures, two different brand positions, and two different approaches really to the business. One more of protection on the Olive Garden side at the time, and then one more of growth, on the Longhorn side, of being that challenger brand and how to get that incremental growth and become a growth brand for the company.
Awesome, man. Let's talk about Legoland. So before we get into all the challenges and the opportunities and the excitement that I know you must be feeling with reopening, can you share a little bit more about Legoland and kind of what your core purpose and promise is?
Yeah, of course. I think one thing that most people here in the U.S. don't know is Legoland is actually part of a bigger company.
Right.
So the parent company that I work for is actually Merlin Entertainment, and we are the second largest company in terms of themed attractions, only behind Disney in terms of attendance. So we're bigger than Universal, we're bigger than SeaWorld, we're bigger than Six Flags, bigger than Cedar Fair, a lot of the companies that Americans know. But we have 130 attractions across 25 countries, so we're truly a global company. Legoland Florida Resort is one of 9 Legoland resorts across the world as well. So here in Florida, we've been open for 9 years, since 2011. It'll be our 10-year anniversary next year. So in the theme park capital of the world, which is Central Florida, we're still the relative newcomer on the block with Disney and Universal and SeaWorld all having decades of experience here in this market. With us just coming up on our first decade anniversary, we are still growing and still learning about this market, but certainly it's been a lot of fun because Legoland Florida Resort. Another thing sometimes people don't know when they haven't heard of us is the scale of what our resort offers. So we're not just a theme park. We have a theme park, we have a water park, and we have 3 hotel accommodations as well. So we are a true resort-wide experience that we offer for our guests across a multi-day vacation.
That's amazing. So Rex, when the pandemic started to take hold, it sounds like due to the global nature of your company and the fact that you have resorts across the world, you guys in Florida had a little bit of a head start in knowing that something was about to hit.
Yeah, and certainly you mentioned that. We did have kind of the advance notice, not just from the news, obviously, that everybody was getting, but Merlin operates what we call midway attractions. So think of like the Madame Tussauds, wax museums, the sea life aquariums. We operate some of those in China, which obviously were impacted, starting in December and then going into January. We have a Legoland resort in Japan, which did close down before Legoland Florida, due to the coronavirus. So we definitely had, as a company, we were already seeing the impacts of coronavirus well before it even came to Florida.
Right.
As a leadership team here in Florida, though, what we started to prepare for were, scenario planning. What would it look like if we had to close down? Of course, you have all of your scenario planning if, heaven forbid, if an actual coronavirus outbreak occurred within the resort or within the staff. What would that look like? What are the procedures that we were going to follow from a health and safety protocol standpoint? So all of those scenarios start to be developed by the on-site team, by the leadership team here. And that process did start in February, where we started looking at that. And then, unfortunately, we ended up having to make a decision to close the resort, close the parks and close the hotels. And that went into effect on March 16th. Before that, the only times we had really closed the resort were due to hurricanes, and that was for 2-3 days. When we initially closed, no one thought it was going to last as long as it did until June. I think we initially announced a 2-week closure, March 16th, and I think we said we were targeting opening up April 1st. And then as it continued to go on, we started doing these week by week extensions until finally we just announced a date that was indefinite, that we were going to be closed indefinitely, since it became so hard to predict what that recovery time frame was going to look like.
Wow, and I know we saw some data that Merlin Entertainment had to furlough about 80% of your staff across the globe in response to the pandemic. So I'm sure that was one of the many tough decisions that even you and your team had to encounter and deal with when the shutdown started.
Yeah, and that was obviously the biggest decision to make. Closing the resort is one thing, and that's the business side of it. And guests managing, guest recovery and moving people's vacations. But the impact that it has on the employees, what we call model citizens, but on the employees was the toughest decision. One that obviously we were not making in a vacuum because everybody across the country was being impacted. But certainly here in Central Florida, where hospitality and tourism is the industry, and that industry was just decimated overnight, seemingly. We ended up, furloughing, over 90% of our employees at Legoland, Florida. But one of the things I'm proud of is that there's a Merlin value called We Care. And we took that value to heart from the very beginning of the process. Even before we started talking about who was going to be furloughed and what departments, we outlined like a set of principles that we wanted to follow as we went through this process. And some of those principles were things like being transparent and not withholding information if we didn't have to, communicating in a timely manner, and over communicating where necessary. So that was, those were some of the principles that we applied in our process. When we first furloughed, we effectively had 2 rounds of furloughs. The first furlough was pretty substantial. And at the time, the CARES Act had not been passed yet. So we didn't have visibility to what the government was going to do as a benefit, and as effectively a welfare program for people, and so we were making that decision without all of the necessary information at the time. And so to our credit, but more so to Merlin's credit, because we had the support of senior leadership, we were able to take care of our furloughed employees. Our salaried staff, we furloughed at 90% pay, and our full-time hourly staff, we furloughed at 50% pay. And then we continued all of our employees that were on medical plans. We continued to keep them on their medical plan, and then also pay their deductibles while they're in the furlough program. So that was something that was important to me. Again, that was an extension of that value of We Care, to be able to take care of our employees, not knowing how long that furlough period was going to last. The second round.
That's awesome, Rick. So the business must have been doing well prior to the pandemic to be able to have the cash in hand and the opportunity to take care of the employees like you guys did.
Yeah, I mean, we have been a very successful business, and Merlin has been very successful for a number of years. But certainly, Merlin, I think 90% of our attractions ultimately were closed at some point in time. And when your only stream of business, your only revenue stream is themed entertainment, and they're all closed, cash liquidity did become obviously an issue, for our company as well that we were looking at. We didn't have the benefit of, say, Universal, that when they, close their parks, they can still rely on Comcast. They can still rely on some of their media properties to generate revenue. So for us, as Merlin, our entire revenue stream is themed entertainment. So it definitely took a hit, but we have private ownership. So we are partially owned by the Kirkby Foundation, which is effectively the Lego family. The Lego company is still a private company that is family led. They have a separate foundation that does investments. And so effectively, Merlin is 50% owned by the Kirkby Foundation. And that is helpful in this scenario, in this circumstance, I should say, to be able to have that support when necessary. But certainly cash liquidity is an issue that continues to be a focus for us, even in our reopening phase, as we look at ensuring that as we reopened, we were going to be able to cover the variable cost of our business as we brought people back in to operate the park.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing. And another great example, I always tell Herbie, I'm kind of fully into camp now of all the benefits of being a private company, and especially when you have that backing of a family that's been a part of the business for a long time.
I think this would have been a very challenging period to live through without that support that you have in the private ranks.
That's awesome. So when you guys started to see the light at the end of the tunnel of the pandemic and said, hey, we're about to reopen, and I know Florida has been one of those states that's been a bit more on the aggressive side of reopening. Even, I know we've listened, Herbie, to the governor saying pro sports, come down here. What was the process, and what were all the steps and milestones that you put in place to make sure you're ready to open?
Yeah, there were really 2 main work streams, and then each one of those has a series of offshoots. First was the health and safety. So to be able to reopen a theme park in a hotel, in a water park, in the midst of a pandemic, it is still going on. What we had to be 100% confident in was that we could provide a theme park experience to our guests in a safe manner, both for them and for our employees. And so we were able to partner very closely with our Merlin counterparts across the globe, some of which had already gone through this process of reopening. So we were able to take learning from them to understand what works and what doesn't, and how do we implement and operationalize some of these changes. We were able to partner with the industry leaders. So there's an industry group called IAPA, which is the trade industry for themed entertainment, and we were able to partner with some of their lead people as well in terms of what are the health and safety protocols that we're going to be looking at as we, and that was done in consultation with epidemiologists and scientists to understand what the right changes were going to be that would be fact-based and data-based in terms of being able to address the risks that are actually out there versus sometimes the perceived risks that might be out there. So the health and safety plan was, a lot of work done by a lot of people, but we were able to effectively pull together a very comprehensive program that does look very different, obviously, from a guest perspective compared to what a theme park experience might have been. But now that we have reopened and we've seen these changes actually, in execution, we're seeing that the response from guests is very positive. There's not the negative downsides that we were, potentially expecting to see, in response to some of these changes. And in fact, we're seeing appreciation for the diligence that, our teams are putting on health and safety throughout the day. Because there are a number of changes, from social distancing to enhanced cleaning to face masks to temperature checks. So a lot of the things that you see out there in other industries or other businesses, you now see almost all coming together in a theme park environment.
Are you guys doing temperature checks at the gates, the front gates, before people come in?
Yeah, so every person that enters into the resort, whether that be front of house or back of house, so whether that be an employee, whether that be a guest, whether that be a contractor or a vendor, everybody is temperature checked on their way in, and if they have a temperature above 100.4 degrees, which is the CDC guidance, then we allow them to retake their temperature 10 or 15 minutes later just to see if we are in Florida. It does get hot here pretty often. So we allow them to see if it's an actual real temperature, or if it was just because they were a little overheated. But if they have a temperature above that limit, then they're not allowed entry into the resort. The handheld thermal scan is the first temperature check. If they register above 100.4 on the thermal scan, we will then give them an oral scanner as the secondary, since that is considered to be a more accurate measurement.
Wow. So what about just in that, Rex? I mean, of course, you guys are prioritizing health and safety, but I read a little bit about the limits of people within the park, which obviously affects revenue. And then you think about the capital costs of having to implement some of these changes and these checks and restrictions. I mean, from a business standpoint, how are you looking at reopening? Because like I said, you've got potentially less people, you've got more costs with the additional innovations and changes you're going to have to do. And then you also have the unknown of when will people feel more comfortable in masses to come back to the park.
Yeah. So a few things. So one, on the P&L side, we do have several levers that we can pull on the cost side. So typically in the summertime, we would be open until 7 or 8 p.m. Because of the crowd sizes that we would typically have in the summer. Knowing that we were going to have substantially less attendance than what we would typically have, we reduced the operating hours to where we were actually closing our park at 5 o'clock now. So we're able to save costs through the operating hours, but we don't feel like we're sacrificing the guest experience because the lower crowd sizes still allow the guests to ride a certain number of rides during their visit. Where before they would have been in the lines a little bit longer, and so therefore, a measurement that we have is rides per guest. So the rides per guest is actually the same now, even though we're at a 5 o'clock closure versus what it was when we were closing at 7 or 8 p.m. But we save a lot on the cost side. So there are some of those levers that we manage there. Certainly attendance, though, the recovery curve is the multi-million-dollar question.
Right.
Of how fast is that curve? How fast are we going to move along that curve? You probably heard of adoption curves in tech industries.
Right.
And I kind of use that when I have the discussion with my team and my leadership, which is right now we're getting the early adopters. We're getting the theme park enthusiasts that are just glad we're back open, and they were going to come no matter what.
Right. You're getting people like me who are like, wait a minute, no people, no lines? Like, this is perfect. This is theme park heaven.
Yeah. In marketing speak, we call that value for money. But and then you have a group that I call the fence sitters. So these are the people that we're not going to be the first out. They don't have any philosophical reservations, though, about whether or not you should be or shouldn't be out right now. But they don't want to be the first ones out. They want to see how does it go, for these other people that go first. And they're going to kind of be that fast follower group that sometimes you hear about in adoption first. We were the first theme park in Central Florida to open on June 1st. Ahead of Disney, ahead of Universal, ahead of SeaWorld. Since then, Universal has opened. SeaWorld actually opened. And then Disney doesn't open up until July 11th is what they've announced.
Mm-hmm.
So when Disney opens and you have all four of the major theme parks here in Central Florida open, that's when I think you'll see a lot of the fence sitters come off the fence, and you'll see another bump in visitation. But to get back to, call it 2019 levels, you're probably looking at, an extended period of time before you have, the masses of people that are comfortable coming to a theme park environment, especially for us as a theme park that is targeted towards families with kids 2 to 12. All of our guest base are families with kids.
Right.
They tend to be a little bit more conservative when it comes to health and safety than, say, maybe a Disney park that has empty nesters that are going for a food and wine festival at Epcot.
Right. That's so true. And I was just looking at some of the data before our call, Rex, and I saw that the total weekly travel spending in Florida or to Florida for the week ending May 30th was about $400 million. And that's the highest it's been since mid-March. But that's still 80% lower than the same period a year ago. So it's picking up, but it's still way, way down.
Oh, yeah. And then again, for Central Florida, we are a tourism-based market. Some theme parks are more regional-based. If you think of a lot of the Six Flags that are out there, I'm sure you remember some of your Six Flags from Texas even.
Right.
But those primarily attract the local markets. Here in Central Florida, we rely on the tourism market. I think Visit Orlando that announced last year there was a record year in terms of tourism with over 77 million people that came into Orlando.
Wow. Right
Right now, you have practically zero international travel.
Right.
You have very, very limited air travel coming into the market right now. The OIA, the airport here in Orlando, is seeing their rates drop considerably, probably to that tune of 80% drop that you just mentioned. So until we get the tourism rebound, it's going to be lower levels versus what we've had in the past.
Right. And we were talking to Dr. Santa Ono, the president of the University of British Columbia, and he was a former president of University of Cincinnati. We were talking about the impact of the loss of international students to his campus and to universities around the world. Yeah. About 25% of their students were international students. And he said the impact for the country of Canada was about $25 billion. And Canada is about 10 times less the population of the U.S., so there's so many similar kind of scenarios when you look at the impact of people not wanting to travel internationally, not just from an education standpoint, but from a tourism standpoint.
Oh, yeah. I think, as you know, through the different conversations you're having, I know you've talked with a restaurateur in Texas and the impact that industry has had. The tentacles of this economic impact spread far and wide. And it will take a little bit of time to fully recover. I know that the Fed just came out, I think it was yesterday, stating that exact statement, which was that, they're expecting this recovery to be a little bit longer than what they initially forecasted. So I think we're all still seeing what this recovery curve is going to look like, industry by industry, but in many cases, we're all somewhat connected to it as well.
as things have evolved, I've seen that people kind of want to rally together and want to support each other. And it's more, and yes, there's the fear and anxiety to some extent about going to some of these places, but there's also like, hell yeah, Legoland was the first to open in Florida of all the theme parks. Like, let's go support them. Let's get out there and kind of show our love and show our appreciation. And we know they have employees and who have families, and that whole ecosystem feels more connected than ever.
Yeah, I think, obviously this is a global pandemic, but if you speak to America here specifically, and it's state by state, but ultimately there is an American spirit that I think is going to show through over the course of the next 12 to 18 months as the country recovers from this pandemic and comes back online, so to speak. I think you'll see that American spirit, shine, and I think the recovery will be a success story. And I still think it'll be faster than what people think, but it might not be as full as people hope for, if that makes sense. But I do believe that that desire to get out, support businesses, to experience life again, it will be what everybody's calling the new normal. But I think people are going to adapt to it pretty quickly.
Yeah, so well said. I was reading an analyst report, and I was sharing with Herbie at the top of the show that in April, many analysts were saying that for theme parks, they were predicting zero attendance through 2020, and then 50% of projected or past attendance in 2021. But obviously, they're already wrong. I mean, we can't trust these analysts, Rex. I mean, I trust you. So what is your view on the future when we do look at the rest of the year and 2021? How do you believe this is going to play out for your business?
Yeah, so I'll go on record with you, Cash, and then at the end of 2021, you can bring me back on the show and see if I'm right or not.
Here we will.
What percentage I hit?
Herbie, write it down.
Write it down right now.
No, I think 2020. So I mean, obviously the analyst was dead wrong on the 0% because we are open, and all of the theme parks are reopening this year.
Right.
I saw Disneyland in California made an announcement they're going to open on July 17th. So you're seeing that rebound happen already in 2020. I think 2020 will be relatively slow. For theme parks, summer, spring break and summer are the peak seasons. We've all missed spring break. Everybody was closed. Many of us are opening the middle of summer, so that's going to be a slow recovery. I think by the time you get into 2021, you'll be looking at a spring break period that starts to rebound, and then I think as you go into summer next year, you'll have a pretty strong recovery. So I wouldn't be surprised to see, at the end of 2021, that you could have levels that are back to, call it 80-90% of where they were in 2019.
Awesome. Well, we're going to hold you. We're not only going to bring you back at the end of 2020. We're going to bring you back in 2021. And check your numbers, Rex. But the last thing, Rex, and thank you so much, man. It's been so awesome just to hear from you and learn about the insight and all the elements that you've had to think through to get the park up and running again. But I wanted to at least talk a little bit about what's happening in the country with Black Lives Matter, with racial inequality, that conversation that Herbie and I have been talking about on the show, that seems to have quickly taken over the dialogue above and beyond coronavirus. And it's an opportunity for companies and brands to speak about what they believe in. We talked at the onset of the pandemic that now is a time for purpose, now is a time for values, now is a time for belief, not your typical product marketing. And now even more with the conversation that's happening across America, customers, consumers, guests are looking at companies and saying, well, what do you stand for? What do you believe in? And I know just from you personally, always being such a passionate, positive person that tries to lead in the most inspiring ways, that I'm sure you have a point of view personally and then for the company. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that obviously this is the word unprecedented gets thrown out a lot these days. Starting with the pandemic, obviously, and then with the Black Lives Matter movement. It's a difficult one to talk about because it is personal for people, for anyone. Whether you're an African American, whether you're a white Caucasian male like myself, or anybody, it impacts you in different ways, but it still impacts you nonetheless. And then as a leader of a business, we have, under normal circumstances, between 1,500 and 2,000 employees at Legoland Florida Resort. And that's, every mix that you could have of gender, race, religion, we have it all within that employee base. And so that's something that we take very seriously as well. I serve on the Diversity and Inclusion Council for all of Merlin. And, we just launched last year, our top 4 priorities, and cultural and ethnic leadership that reflects our customers is one of ours.
Awesome.
Finding the best people, and making it work for them, meaning, finding ways to tailor work experiences for their needs, that are individual to them, is one of our goals. So it's something that we've been talking a lot about within Merlin because of, again, as a global company, as a company with very diverse workforces. I've been proud of Merlin's response at a senior level, especially as a UK-based company. The ownership that our CEO has taken on standing up for justice and standing up for what is right, specific to Black Lives Matter, which is a US-based movement. But it's gone, I'm sure you've seen the news. It isn't just in the US anymore.
Right.
There's protests that are happening across the world. And so Merlin has taken a very firm stance on this, that we, stand with the protesters in using the words, in outrage against the injustice that happened in particular to Floyd in Minnesota, but then also, the racial injustices that have happened, in this country for centuries.
Right.
Personally, I have 2 young daughters, and I look at it, obviously Black Lives Matter is a movement to a specific, race and, for specific injustices that have happened to them. But I also look at, the inclusion across and, the movement that, has taken place with the gender improvements, but still not all the way there yet.
Right.
We have, I think, Pride events are coming up very soon across the world as well. And so there's a number of things that I think we need to continue to look at. But, for me, Kash, it boils down to just being nice to people. You know what I mean? It's something, I know it sounds, maybe too simplistic for something that is this complicated and this deep rooted. But at the end of the day, if we can sometimes take a moment to think about things from the other person's perspective and try to understand something that may be almost incomprehensive to you. I personally don't know what it's like to have a police car come up behind my vehicle, for a traffic stop. My worry is he going to give me a ticket or is he not going to give me a ticket? Will he let me out of it?
Right.
I know that's not the worry for a lot of other people, though. And it's hard for me to think about that on a daily basis. But it can be movements like this that now make you stop and think, about somebody else's perspective. And so that's why when you take that moment, try to put the politics of it to the side and just think about the individuals that are being impacted on all sides here. I'm speaking to somebody that has a brother-in-law and a sister-in-law in the NYPD. So I understand everybody's point of view here and how we need to treat each other with respect and with dignity, no matter what. And if we do that, I think a lot of these problems will solve themselves. Now, I realize it's too simple to just solve it by saying that. There still has to be specific actions that are taken, and that's where I think this movement is starting to put some things in place. I think with NASCAR banning the Confederate flag.
Yep.
Right? Would that have happened without Black Lives Movement? No, obviously.
Right.
Someday it would have happened. It wouldn't have happened this week. So the protests, regardless of your political view, they are starting to have an effect in a positive way to move us as a country towards, a common respect for each other. And that's my goal and that's my desire, both personally and then certainly I want to emulate that as a leader within my business.
Man, so well said. So well said, Rex. And now I know why I've always looked up to you and been inspired by you as just a business leader and just a great human. Herbie and I and the team here at Be Somebody and BSB have been talking about it for many weeks that we feel like things are different now. This feels different. Change is actually occurring. Actions are being put behind a lot of strong words, but leave it to the head of a theme park in Florida to break it down in the most simple but powerful way. Just be nice. Just be nice to each other, right, Herbie? And starting with Herbie, like, Herbie, please be nice to me, man.
I am very nice to you, Kash.
But Rex, thank you.
I think part of that probably just comes from you having to talk about some of these conversations with a 9-year-old daughter. And
Right.
sometimes you have to break it down into the simple language too.
Yeah. No, but simple, but also, I mean, very profound, Rex. Very profound with what you said, and I know, just being a personal friend of yours, these are things that you've talked about for a long time, and these are values you stood for a long time. So I really respect that, and appreciate your leadership here at a time that we really need great leadership across the country.
Oh, thank you. And it's been great catching up with you, Kash. I know it. Again, I've been following you from a distance down here in Florida over the past several years as I've seen your journey as well, and you keep inspiring people to do more and, of course, be more as well.
Well, thanks, man. Appreciate all your support. The resilience is still strong. in all of us. And I can't wait to make it down there to Legoland. I want to ride. I know you market to the younger demographic, but me and Herbie want to sit in a roller coaster together on Legoland.
Yep.
And we want to come eat some cake down there with you. And we're going to be like, Rex, show us your numbers. So we were holding you accountable. We've got the recording. Let's hear it.
We will do that 80 to 90% by the end of 21.
Boom,
So,
Herbie,
double it down.
road trip.
That's great.
Road trip.
Let's do it.
Awesome,
You're welcome.
Rex.
You are welcome anytime. We'll give you what we like to call a bricktastic time at Legoland.
Yes.
Let's do it.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Rex. We'll talk to you soon, brother.
All right. Thanks, Kash.
Have a good one. Man, what a way to end that conversation, Herbie, with Rex, with just such an inspiring message of unity, of hope, of togetherness, of diversity, all of that on top of the monumental effort that he and his team are putting together to really bring people together from all different races and cultures and backgrounds to that theme park. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, Kash, and they've obviously put so much thought and work into every aspect of that plan, and so it was just so cool to hear from him. And Kash, from our conversation with Rex today, what's the one big thing?
I really think it's about what not to believe and who not to believe, because it's one of those things when we were talking about the analysts who said 0% attendance, no more people in theme parks, the dire predictions on one end. And then you look at people like Rex and his team taking all the steps and precautions necessary from a health and safety standpoint and breaking and defying all the odds to open way before anyone thought that they would or they could, And I know that there's debates on either side of the issue. Some people said they opened too late. Some people said they're opening too soon. But overall, they had a team of people who believed in doing something the right way, with principles, with transparency, with health and safety top of mind, and other people's experience and the magic that they could create at the top of their minds. They did something that just a couple months ago, people said they could never do. And when you think about everything that we've learned here on the Be Somebody journey, and every time we've been told we can't do something, and every time every entrepreneur has said that idea isn't good enough, or that idea isn't going to make it, or do you know how many small businesses fail, or do you know if you launch that product, it's not going to catch on, or if you open that time, people aren't going to come into the park. All those negative things that people tell you about why you can't do something, why you shouldn't do something, why you won't ever win when you try it. Rex Jackson and his team proved a lot of people wrong by opening up way before people thought they could, but doing it still in a safe way that's going to inspire a lot of people, get people back to normal, help people get a sense of normalcy. And I'm just really inspired by how they did it and why they did it, and how they were able to keep their team together and operate under the right principles, the right values, and a spirit of transparency and togetherness that really fits what a theme park is all about.
It's such an important takeaway, Kash. Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Thank you for listening to the Be Somebody podcast. Be sure to check out all of our full audio and video episodes on besomebody.com or listen and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get yours. We out.
You.